in discovering them ley lines, it takes us deeper into the core of our inner self. Down the rabbit hole, as some would say. We find the cracks from the shifts and the rifts of the conflict from the traumas. We look at the stories. We look at the myths. We even clean our favorite characters. Even looking at how we view love, all through this common fixed point. This is where the hypervigilance or that PTSD comes into the picture. The way we view our environment through a set of lenses that are set to hyper-alertness, which what most think is simply scanning the environment for the quote-unquote hidden dangers, is actually something that's deeply rooted within the subconscious, creating from that hidden culture. That's what we create, or we co-create from. Transmuting through the frequency of the destructive mindset. This waiting for the other shoe to drop, looking for the bomb to blow up in our face, living in this state of surviving at all costs, and isolation through inclusion. Welcome to the God Hour Podcast. Hypervigilance. Let's get into this. Grand rise, guys and goddesses. Blessed be to the day, may it be everything you require to gain access to the authenticity to acquire your greatness. This is to the kings and the queens. This is to the gods and the goddesses. This is to the brujas. This is to the shamans, the shamanesses, the occultists, the alchemists, the adepts, all the way to the initiates, the ones that just started their shadow work, and the ones that have been working in their shadow work. Welcome to the God Hour Podcast. I'm your host, your master of ceremonies, your occult psychologist, Papa Lucifer. And this week, we're getting into hypervigilance, PTSD. Removing the lenses of that hyper-alertness, always looking for the dangers so that we can better, instead of reacting, we learn how to respond. And you know, we break this down into those sessions. This week's sessions we're going to get into is the forest through the trees, and then we're going to get into isolation within inclusion. And then we're going to smooth it out with get a little bit into the hyper masculine and the hyper feminine before we don't peek into that, because that's gonna be the night show. But you know, before we get into this, Papa gotta give you the reading for that clarity for the week, and then we don't get into this session. Welcome once again to the God Hour Podcast. You gotta tune in to tap in. There's nothing left but for you to hear. Let's get into this. Welcome to the daily collective reading. Get the cards shuffled up real quick. Get our cards shuffled up. Pulling from the Hermetica deck today. Pulling from the Hermetica deck. I like the Hermetica deck. Makes the night real soft today. Make sure them cards shuffled up real nice. Alright. Get one more in there. Perfect. Alright, first card we're gonna pull off. 5 of Pentacles. Second card being pulled is the Queen of Wands. Third card being pulled is the 8 of Pentacles. Third card to be pulled is the 10 of Cups. And the last final card is the High Priestess. Let's get into this reading, shall we? When I look at the 5 of Pentacles, when I look at the 5 of Pentacles, what I see is it represents the aspects of that hardship or that loss. It represents the material troubles. It represents those material troubles. You're in a current state where nothing seems to be going your way. Let me give you something to think about. I've said it before. You may be feeling this extreme isolation, and that isolation may make you feel really, really emotional. Here's the key to stepping out of that space. You have to understand that you being where you at is only the end of a cycle. There's things that you're not going to be able to take forward with you, and the ways that you used to, the ways that you acquired what you got, the way that you got what you got is no longer substantial at this point. You may feel like you lost that job because you've been at that job for 16, 17 years. You may feel like you've been at a job for a good year and you had a good standing. It doesn't matter. You may feel like that relationship that you in, that it was the best relationship ever. But now that friendship is on the rocks. That relationship with friend, family, whoever it may be, it's on the rocks. It's no longer substantial. It's giving you a real humbling blow. It's forcing you to sit down. You need this moment of isolation. You need this moment to yourself. You need this moment to yourself. You need this moment to yourself. You need it. Stop trying to fight it. I tell people all the time, stop trying to fight that. Stop fighting the process. I tell people all the time, stop trying to fight the process. Stop trying to jump ahead. What happens for a lot of times is when we get an answer that we do not like, the first thing that we try to do is try to make it work for us. Because this is what we're used to doing. But the Queen of Wands is giving us that you are that determinedness, that determination that you always have, that courageousness that you always want to use, that vision that you have. It's time to actually start using it in creation. You see, everything that you held on before, think of how you got it. Think of how it's sustained in your life. Think of how you built. Think of how it became suitable in your life. Think about it. Was it based on the trauma? Was it based on the fear of being alone? Was it based on the fear of not being able to be the best that you can be for yourself? Or the definition that you're trying to hold on to, the old definition of yourself, the old view of yourself? What was it? This is what fed your determination. And your determination got full. Your ego got real full, and now it's time to dump off. Your ego only can fill up to so much before it has to dump it off. Remember, your ego loves suffering. Your ego thrives in suffering, and your soul thrives in sacrifice. So now it's time to sacrifice the old sights to to bring yourself into that new vision. You're being asked to be bold and to be straightforward with yourself. I I tell people all the time, it's time for you to be straightforward with yourself, be honest with yourself. It's time for you to put yourself till you actually start using your intellect to start building that new floor. Use what you know in order to understand where you are going. Remember, the intellectual aspect, that's the floor. That table that's sitting in the middle of that space, that's your genius. Your genius is sitting on that table. It's time for you to really create. This is brought into you through that Queen of Wands, nurturing your energy. It's time just to really start nurturing yourself. You've been in a space, right? You've been in a space for a little bit where you sitting here trying to make everybody else good, making sure everybody else is fed, trying to make sure everybody else is in a good position. It's time to stop that shit. I'm telling you right now, it's time to stop that. It's time to stop putting yourself second and stop putting yourself before things, after things, and start putting yourself into yourself. This is given to us in the Eight of Pentacles. This is given to us in the Eight of Pentacles. The Eight of Pentacles represents all that hard work. It represents all that hard work that you've been putting into everything else as of late. It's time to really start turning that into yourself. This is about that mastery. It's time to become the apprentice to the inner. It's time to unlock and start working with your apprentice, your inner child. It's time to bring yourself into that state of mastery. It's time to improve yourself in the internal state. Whether it's from the internal state and now you're programming your day, whether it's you need to start working out, going for a walk, going for a run, listening to audiobooks while you're doing your workouts or cleaning up the house. Whatever you're doing, it's time to start mastering based on the internal aspects of yourself. Start finding the value within yourself, and everything else is going to start growing into that space. It's time for you to start studying you. Right now, for a lot of people coming to their space with themselves, and we move forward in this thought with ourselves of, I'm a master it enough so I can keep doing what I'm doing. I remember when I first got into my studies, and I would study just like when I thought about psychology, when I was going to school for my bachelor's in psychology. And I remember always sitting there, and my thought process was, I'm doing this to understand my own mind. But then when I got to the end, I got the result was what I needed it for, I didn't want to use it. It's not until now, after all of these years of healing, I understand that why I needed it. It was a seed. You see, the things that you're coming into, whether you studied a book on numerology, you're reading on the Orishas, whatever you're studying, it's a seed. Allow it to plant itself. Allow it to do the work. Allow it to break apart the old shit that you got used to. That's what is coming into the aspects of your mastery. This is going to be led into the aspects of that Ten of Cups. Remember, the Ten represents the end of that cycle. Remember, the Ten of Cups represents the end of a cycle. So that cycle of you sitting there, filling everybody up, it's time to stop filling everybody up. The Ten of Cups embodies the aspects of your true happiness. The Ten of Cups represents the embodiment of your true happiness, where you're standing at, and it feels real good. This is a real joyous occasion for yourself. You're coming into a space to where you're actually being able to understand your emotions more. You're coming into this space where you're looking at the things outside of you in that narrative. You're looking at the things outside of you. It's time to surround yourself with the things that you were once surrounded with, that you poured yourself into. In this case, why were you pouring into them? What did they mean? Every time I see the Ten of Cups, this is what I think about. You're only going to find the happiness once you identify these cups that you've been filling. Maybe it is that friendship that you keep pouring your energy into, and you're not getting anything. You're not getting the reciprocation of energy to help you expand. Maybe it is that family relationship that you're trying to maintain, and you're noticing that it's not giving you the reciprocation to help you expand. It's all about reciprocation and helping you expand. all the conversations you should be having right now should be making you expand. They should not be triggering you to do the same thing. But at the same time, they should be triggering you to become aware that they always lead you to the same thing. A lot of times we come into our space and we look around ourselves, and the reason that we maintain the environment that we're in is because it keeps us safe from the discomfort, or safe from the danger. The danger is nothing but discomfort in a lot of cases. So you have a fear of the danger, that high alert aspect that you got in your life. You got yourself on high alert to keep yourself being comfortable in your space. It's time to step out of that. The Ten of Cups represents the end of that cycle of going through that process with yourself. And then that leads us to the High Priestess. The High Priestess gives us the aspect of, you know what? I need this isolation. I need to sit here in this space with myself. The longer that I sit in this space, the longer that I can see the veil. I can see the veil thinning. A lot of us have to come into that space. You got to see that veil thinning. You're now in your conscious mind. You're now in your subconscious. It's now it's time for you to actually start looking at the hidden aspects in your mind. It's really time for you to really sit here with yourself and be like, you know what? It's time for me to sit down and really look at my life for what it is. I really got to start paying attention to myself. That's why because what you're going to notice is the more you start focusing on what's that aspects of that inner light for yourself, finding your inner light in that darkness, the less you're going to keep going forward in this state of mind with yourself, going back to that Five of Pentacles that we talked about in the beginning. You're going to be able to not react to the hardship or whatever's happening. You're going to learn how to respond. You're going to move out of that space of reacting to the hardship. When things come up in our lives, I remember for a long period of time for myself, just in myself, I remember sitting in spaces where when something bad would come up, I think it would be the end of the world. I gotta find a way out. And then when I found a way out, when I found the answer, I used the answer as the fix-all. I used the answer as the fix. It's time to stop using it. The answer is never the fix. The answer simply leads you to the further internal truth within yourself. What you need to be doing in that moment in time. If you're sitting there and you lost your job, maybe it's time for you to sit down at the house and pull out that notepad that you've been scribbling with all those ideas. You might be sitting there where you wondering why you gave everybody rides and now your car is out or whatever. You reached that hard time. You wondering why all these other individuals ain't able to give it to you. That's what you're going to start realizing, that it's time to really master the aspects of yourself, because those cups that you were filling that gave you that joy, I always say it like this. I always think about this. Use this mantra. If I help everybody with their karmic debt, I'm always there for them. And I'm always there to bail them out. Then in reality, when it comes time for me to bail myself out, and I expect others to help me, I have to realize that they never had the chance to learn. They never had the chance to invest into the change done by that hard time or that hard place. That's one of the major keys for you moving forward. If this message resonated with you, or if you're allow it to help you move throughout this week. If you're interested in a more personal reading or any of my other services, including Saturday Word Consultation, natal chart analysis, and a slew of others, human design charts, stay tuned to the Plug Talk to get that information. After this message, we're going to get into this session. I love you. We love us. I'll share. You feel like you got a voice, feel like you got something to say? feel like you have something that can move the masses or get everybody tuned in and you want a bigger audience, whether it can be anything from something like the God Hour or anything from like sports, news, fashion week, whatever it may be. Let me put you on to something. The easiest way to do it is with the Anchor app. Biggest thing about it is free. There's creation tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or your computer. Anchor will even do all of the distribution for your podcast for you so it can be heard on many other platforms such as Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and many more. You can make money. You also can make money from your podcast with a minimum listenership. It's everything you need to make a podcast all in one place. It's everything you need to get your voice heard and get what you feel that's in your heart and enter to your heart out to the masses. If you're interested, download the free Anchor app or go to Anchor FM to get started. Welcome to another episode of the God Hour podcast. I want to take us to that future, because we understand the future is the continuum with the past and the present. Stay in the state of now. You know, we break down these sessions into these segments. Got two very deep segments we're going to get into, and then I'm going to give you a little sample of what we're going to do tonight. This first segment of this week's session is Forest Through the Trees. The details of the trauma become the environment If you've never heard that this saying before, you can't see the forest through the trees, it's when we put ourselves in a state of focusing on, through the hypervigilance, through the PTSD, through the trauma, we now put ourselves into a state where we're always looking for that. And what we thinking is what is normal is actually a part of that psychosis that we talked about before. Being stuck within that space, being stuck within those ley lines and not realizing that what you're looking for, you're actually creating. Because remember, the mind is all and everything is mental. So if you think it, you breathe life into it, it comes into your space. It's like the old lady is like, I remember watching the C. Freeman L lecture, and it's like the old lady that's looking for someone to rob her will find someone to rob her. Or you put it simple and plain, you're looking for a reason to leave your job. So then a reason is created for you to lose your job. You're looking for a reason for that relationship to be over, so there's always reasons for the relationship to be over. You're looking for a way out, and there's always going to be a way out. Here's the key when we use this based on the aspect of being stuck within that PTSD, that post-traumatic stress disorder, that post-traumatic stress disclaimer that we put in our minds. I don't like calling them disorders. The post-traumatic stress disclaimer that we program into our subconscious, that has been programmed into our subconscious, that makes us do the things based on this hypervigilance. Think about spidey sense. Think about something tingling. Get that tingling yourself, and you saying it's your intuition. Yeah, I knew I shouldn't have did this, and I knew I shouldn't have did that, or I knew this shit. I knew it was too good to be true. Guess what? If you think it's too good to be true, it's going to be too good to be true. If you think that someone's going to leave, they're going to leave. You know why? Because because already in your mind, you already have reasons based on the trauma of why somebody left, why somebody wasn't there, why this didn't work out. That's already predetermined in the destructive mindset already. The unhealed mind, the unhealed self. That shadow, everything leads back to that fucking shadow work. So this is when you met, I'm going to give you this and we're going to build off of this. when you manifest, and I know people have read the different ways, the different lines of manifestation, and one of them is to think about it and set it and forget it. Set it and forget it. Here's the key. When you stuck in this state of post-traumatic stress disclaimer that you put into your subconscious, that's how manifestation works. Remember, we've been doing these things unconsciously forever. You've been doing it for eons. You've been down here for those eons. So when you start looking at things based on the trauma, looking through the forest, through the trees, there's a lot of things right now that in the space that you in and you're moving forward that we should no longer look back to. Here's one of the main ones, and we're going to build from it and build it to the more personal level. Somebody gets shot. Black man gets shot. Black woman gets shot. Black child gets shot. Whatever happens. Take that into, now hold that in your head. The first thing you're going to do is what? We got to march, protest, and we got to riot. All right, cool. You already have in your mind programmed everything for protesting and rioting. Where did it come from? It came from that civil rights movement. Post-traumatic stress disclaimer. You have things that underline, that outline the contract or the code of contact, that code of conduct, or that disclaimer that you have set into your mind. You set your code of conduct. Your code of conduct is outside of the moral balances of you looking into that space, looking for something to happen. You set your code of conduct. This is being responsible and being accountable. This is the acknowledgement aspect. Until you acknowledge, until you have went through the stages of acknowledgement, acceptance, and being able to apologize and forgive and move forward, you cannot create the new code of conduct. You cannot create your, in quotes, your new moral compass, because you're still moving based on the old moral compass. I'm gonna give you an example real quick, and we don't keep building. I'm loving this one. I remember there will be a time. I remember the points of time in relationships where, based on the traumas, I didn't realize it was based on the trauma, but now I am fully aware that I had separation anxiety. Lost a lot of family members. I lost a lot of family members transition. Grandmother and padre included in that. And so I had separation anxiety. The lack of love from my mother, or the way my mother did things, or the way my pops did things, and family members did things, it fed this, it was being fed by the separation anxiety. So I had this code of conduct. I had this post-traumatic syndrome disclaimer. I had this post-traumatic subconscious disclaimer in my mind that made me always be alert in any position. So let's say I'm sitting there in a relationship. Relationship's going very, very well. In those first couple of months, going very, very well. We going on trips and shit. I'm noticing patterns when I did therapy on myself. We going on trips during every time in every relationship went down the same line of events. This is you building that space. For an example of can't see through the woods, Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, looking at Snow White, but there's a movie, I want to say it's called The Woods or The Village, where the little girl is like I think like one of the screenshots. I'm gonna look it up and post it on my I might post a clip of it, post some clips of it. But they were stuck in the woods, and it was like old timey. They were like pioneers and shit, like during the old time, the Great Oregon Trail, the settlers. But in reality, when they stepped on that, I remember they got lost and they kept hearing lights and sounds, and they thought it was like aliens or some shit. And then one of them like walked to the road, and they saw a paved road. It's towards the end of and then across the street is the pharmacy. So everybody's dying, and there's a pharmacy across the street that can actually help them. We understand that neither here nor there, but there's a pharmacy across the street. Here's what you keep doing. Every time that you look for the answer, and you look at the answer through the high alert, through this aspect of looking for dangers, guess what answer you look for? You look for the answer that fits your trauma. A lot of us look for the answer that fits our trauma. That's why you got motherfuckers that train for, they got the white people and white folks out there in the woods. They didn't build whole bunkers and shit because they're going through a post-traumatic stress disorder. This makes you, I remember looking the other day, I looked at the picture of Malcolm X, the famous picture when he's standing with the AK looking out the window. And when I looked at it, I've looked at that picture 1 million times. Over 1 million times. The first time I looked at that picture, I was like, he's suffering from hypervigilance disorder. Hypervigilance or PTSD. Half of the things that you deal with in your day-to-day are built. Remember, everything down here is based on emotion, based on learning how to respond to your emotions. So everything, when you don't have your emotions in order, you're susceptible to everything outside of you triggering your emotions. So I'm thinking about these relationships that I was in, and if I did not get a certain response or reaction, then I thought I wasn't doing right. I felt powerless. I felt like I was losing control. I felt like they weren't there. And then I would play the story out in my mind as like, maybe it's time for it to be over. It's all right, cool. I'll be fine by myself. I've been here before. What I was really doing was establishing the mind control that I already had put on myself. The mind control through the indoctrination. You put yourself into that state of mind control. And here's the key. If you say you're not under mind control, guess what? You're under mind control. It's the same thing as saying, it's synonymous with you say the thought process. If you don't care, you don't have to say you don't care. If you don't give a fuck, you don't have to say you don't give a fuck. If I say it's fine, then maybe it's not fine. I just have not learned how to respond to the situation, respond to what's going on. And this is what happened when we stuck in those trees. When you stuck in that forest in them trees and you looking for shit that's you're only calling out shit that is naturally within that environment. And then you feel like you're actually doing something. You're actually moving forward. So let's say, for example, you in the woods, you're in these metaphorical woods. You're in the metaphorical woods with yourself. And you're sitting there in the metaphorical woods, and the woods is right there, and you're in the metaphorical woods. And say you're in the metaphorical woods. For example, say you're in the metaphorical woods. Now, you see a bear in the metaphorical woods. I really want you to think about this shit. You see a bear in the metaphorical woods. There's a bear in the metaphorical woods. The bear is supposed to be there. That's where the bear lives. You see a squirrel in the metaphorical woods. And now you sitting there saying to yourself like, oh my God, there's a squirrel in the woods. Duh, dummy, there's supposed to be a squirrel in the woods. That's where the squirrel lives. Now I'm saying this based on the aspects when we're inside of ourselves, because a lot of times we put ourselves into this space where, I give you an example, that bear in the woods is that failed aspect of a relationship with yourself. The bear in the woods is the failed aspect of the relationship that you have with yourself. The failure that you have to actually start learning yourself or working within yourself. That's the failed relationship in that narrative, in that space. All right. So now you sitting in your space with that thought process that everything in that point in time, you're always on high alert. You're always in this state of high alert, overthinking, because high alert is high emotion. You're always waiting for the emotional peak in that space. So let's go back to those relationships. I remember doing everything in the relationship to a normal key point. But when it came time to let's say the 6th, 7th month or whatever, when things really would change, or things like the investment cycle is over, because remember, it's 6 months, then that 7th month is the month that's the creation. Like, what are you creating based on what you seen in this first 6 months? What are you about to invest into these? What changes are you willing to invest into to continue that cycle? I would get to about month 7. I started off hard. Okay, cool. Because every time it always came around the same pattern. I always get, okay, cool. I'm about to go. It's my birthday weekend, my death date coming up, or I'm having a vacation coming up. And they always come in around those same times. Why? Because predetermined inside of my mind, I was like, I can't go to these places by myself. Something simple. I can't go to these places by myself. I would look crazy going to the beach by myself. I would look crazy going out of town by myself. So then, since it was in my mind predetermined, guess what else was in my subconscious as a trigger point? That argument I had with my mother about taking money or whatever. Trying to fix that relationship with my mother. Now I'm trying to fix this relationship with my mother through every relationship that I'm in. I'm trying to show them in an unconscious manner what it is that if I can prove it to them, then it's automatically proved. Then in some way, shape, or form, deep down, that longing or that wanting inside of me can be shut up. And my inner child to shut the fuck up and be like, see, I'm showing them I don't need to deal with the drama with my family. I don't need to deal with the people in my family. I'm stuck in a state of escapism. This is one of the biggest things when you come into this hypervigilance with yourself. So let's go back to that picture of Malcolm X. When I look at the picture of Malcolm X, I see a man suffering PTSD. I do not see, I see somebody battling PTSD. PTSD. I see a man battling PTSD. When I see the famous Malcolm X speech, when he was talking about, I brought my people into a burning house, I see a man battling PTSD. His emotions are at the highest point before the end of his cycle. Because shortly after that, didn't he transition? He passed? Didn't he die? So think about, really, this is when you start looking at these things we have to stop looking at these things based on reaction. So we feel good for it because we feel good about the Martin Luther King had a dream speech every year. And we feel good about this every year out. You feel good about going to that birthday party. You feel good about going over to this event. You feel good that you can go get something from that space. We got to start responding. Responding is being able to sit there in that space and see why I keep making this same mistake. What's changed? What's changed in my space that I what's changed in my space? It's time for me to invest in that change. Because a lot of times we go into the space, I remember it's been 7 years. It's crazy. It's been about 7 years since the relationship that broke and killed it destroyed the aspects of my ego being what it was forever. Been about 7 years. And I remember we broke up for a good, it was a good stint of time we broke up. We got back together. Or we were in the road to going back together. We got back together. Things was going kind of good. I was going through the space. Okay, I was in a better space. She was trying to get to a better space. But I noticed something at the end of that cycle. When the cycle ended, that's when I lost, like, everything was gone. Like, nigga, you can no longer keep doing this. That was one of my many moments that I actually had to sit there with myself, because after that I lost my job, got homeless. It wasn't because of her. We had to stop this external blame. It wasn't because of her. It's because I acknowledged the cycle. I unconsciously acknowledged the cycle. Because what I noticed is the second go around into that space with myself, it was me being me. What I was in the beginning is what I was in the ending. I always was this financially sound. I was always in I was financially minded, always in these states to where I could bring people out of the dirt and sit there and help people get better and make people get better and all this shit, help people get back on their feet and shit. And that's what I was. At that moment in time, I realized that I spent so much time in my life going through a hypervigilance or looking at things that forest through the trees. I was so focused on getting that relationship back together. I couldn't see everything that was going on around the relationship or the end of that shorty in that relationship. See, sometimes when we come into our mind, we get so fixed on this is when we usually make this step, or we usually do this, or this time last year I did this, this, and this, and I move forward, that we don't look at what's going on around the space. We can't look at the big picture. And this is where a lot of us get stuck at. You can't look at the big picture because you're still focused on one key point. A lot of us are stuck in, I was having a conversation the other day, and we were having me and my homegirl, we was having a conversation, brief conversation, and we was talking about the aspects of building legacies. And we put so much time into pointing at something, or this is why that can't happen, or this is why we can't do this, or this is why people can't do this and this. And I was like, me and her are building legacies in our separate aspects. I'm building the legacy of the God Occult Alchemist LLC, building this and learning how to expand, and the learning through teaching, through counseling, and all of my other works that I do, through the pod, all the things that I do in normal, like my works. And I'm building a legacy. I'm learning how to build a business. I'm not learning how to build a business. I'm learning how to sustain. I'm learning how to grow the value in my legacy. You can't build your legacy. Remember, you can't build in fear. So most people that are stuck within a state of that post-traumatic stress, they never can expand past a certain point. Even if they are building something. Even if you trying to start a company, you starting an LLC, or you stepping away from the 9-to-5, or you trying to do something, there's only so far you're going to go before the triggers are going to start happening. There's only so far you're going to be able to go before those triggers start hitting in. Before that isolated that one isolated incident, or the series of isolated incidents, there it is. That isolated incident or a series of isolated events are going to start really hitting at you. The reason why you ain't going, this is why a lot of us can't move forward. I talked about it in Pillars of Captivity, and we talked about it a little bit in last week's episode, those ley lines. Now that you've removed those statues, those old statues of limitation, it's time to address the shifts, the rifts, the cracks, and the trauma. It's time to address those traumas. Because until you do that, you're going to be stuck in a state of this, what I call you're going to be stuck in a state of, if you are wounded feminine, you're going to be stuck in a state of the hyper-masculine. If you are in the wounded masculine, you're going to be stuck in the aspects of the hyper-feminine. And when I'm talking about these corresponds of the hyper-masculine, hyper-feminine, it's you're going to take The feminine, you want to take the masculine, some people call it the toxic masculinity. The aspects of toxic masculinity, those are under the aspects of you being on high alert about what it is about the definition. Anything that challenges the definition of being a man. So now you stuck in the forest by yourself saying there's a bear in the forest. That bear is supposed to be there. What does that bear represent? Remember, symbolism's over a lot of you niggas' heads. What is that shit symbolize to you? Why do you put so much energy into it? And then you start looking around you, you're meant to stay in the forest. Your trauma will leave you stuck in the fucking forest, fighting for your life when there is no need to fight. Fighting the shadows that are only external representations and reflections of your own shadows that have been based upon your behavior. Your hate, remember, there's only two emotions, love and fear. Under these two emotions are the feelings, are the aspects of the feelings. Because if you love, that means you can feel joy, feel happiness, feel peace, feel the energy of creation, feel abundance, feel the higher levels of abundance, feel the higher levels of prosperity, and all of these aspects. If you're in fear, then you feel hatred, you feel anger, you feel despair, you feel depressed. Those aren't emotions. Those are the feelings. That's why when someone says they're depressed, and then they say, what's the definition of depressed? Why are you depressed? What emotion? What just goes back. This is how you start. This is how, when I'm working with a client, I'm teaching you to go back to, okay, you're depressed. What do you fear letting go of? What do you fear? What aspect of fear is holding you down? Because depression is the aspect. Depression is simply explained in, if I'm sitting in a position where I'm at, where my lower self, I'm depressed because I'm not challenging myself, or I've not learned the aspects of my lower self to rise into my higher self. My higher self is tired of pulling down all this energy, because this is how you start getting tired. You keep pulling all your energy down into this space right here where your fear reigns. So it burns out real quick. Remember, fear is that quick frequency. Fear moves really, 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 really quick. It's an impulse, so it's really, really quick. So think about, you bring all your energy down just for a quick pulse. Just think about you bringing all your energy down from the highest aspect of love, the highest of the frequencies for yourself, and you bringing that all the way down into the state of guilt. I feel guilty for being in love. I feel guilty for loving myself. I feel guilty or ashamed to love myself. How can I love me? How can I do this? Look what I've been through. I don't deserve it. I deserve the best things in the world. And then what you think is love, what you bring it down here because of that hyper-alertness, that overthinking, guess what you do? You simply learn how to react to the space. So now you in spaces and your whole house full of all these nice things, but none of them shits make love. None of those things give you an aspect of love at night. And this is past the person. It's about you. I sit in my living room after a day of work, after my days of doing my work readings and sessions, and I sit there and I sit here in my living room. Right now I'm watching Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. I'm in season 3. There is a lot of gems in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. A lot of gems in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. A lot. Just wanted to throw that out there. You catch it, you don't. But yeah, So we move ourselves into this space with ourselves, and now it comes into this entombment of being included, isolation through inclusion. We come into this state of being this isolation, and we hide our isolation, our feelings of isolation, that needed isolation, within the inclusion. And I'm going to flip the tape over real quick. Little old school line. We don't flip it over and then we don't come right back to this. Thank you for choosing the God Hour podcast. And we back. We back to this next part. I wanted to say this because of the aspects when we get into, in reality, you actually build up the much needed isolation. And I've been going over it the last couple of weeks. You build up the much needed isolation by understanding the declines. You understand it. When the emotions are at their highest, that means when you're always in a state of high alertness, you never can see when the decline's hitting. Because you're always stuck on something. You're always trying to be included in something, or you're always trying to be included. You're never trying to be the odd man out or the odd woman out. And this is where we get into this segment. Inclusion, or rather isolation through inclusion. This is that state of, a lot of people are stuck in, we get stuck in this state because this is the state when we're sitting there, you sitting there allowing yourself to try to become, you're trying to miss out or skip out on things through the habit of what would be in the atmosphere. The state of escapism, the distraction from healing self through atmosphere. And we're going to break down, I'm going to break all that down, what that means when it goes to that space. So, okay, cool. Now that you have this trauma, now that you're dealing with a trauma, now you got the post-traumatic subconscious disclaimer. You're always in high alert. So now every environment that you go into or try to be included into, even when you're inside of that environment, you feel isolated because nobody is seeing. You ever gone somewhere and you just don't fit? It just doesn't click. It just doesn't work. But you try to make it work for fear of actually being to yourself. Actually embracing that alone or that hermit state, that isolation. Because only in isolation or only in the silence can you really have time to sit there and learn how to respond to, learn to get the information from learning how to respond or learning how to understand the space. So a lot of times we come into that space with ourselves, and it's similar to, think about it like this. If I go out with people, I don't expect think about when you go out with your lady, or you think about going out with your lady, or ladies, vouch for this, put that in there, and you sit your phone there, there's no phones. Think about when you were little and your mom was like, no phones at the dinner table, or no TV at the dinner table, or whatever it may be, into that space. And you waited for one time. I remember sitting at the house, and I remember my mom would say, we have to come in the kitchen to watch. We have to come in the kitchen, sit there as the family thing. And I remember my pops would always be in the living room watching TV. My pops would never sit at the kitchen table with us. Very rarely, but he would really never sit at the kitchen table. I always wondered why that was. But then as I started going through my healing work, and I remember there would be times like my mom would go certain places, or my mom would, we would go places, like family events or whatever of that nature, and my pops would never come, or certain shit like that would happen. And then it wasn't until like later on as I grew up in in my career here on Earth, and I was like, my pops would always say the same things. I don't fuck with your family. They liars and thieves and all of this narrative. But I was like, in my mind, I'd be like, why wouldn't he leave? Even down to the point of my pops would always be like, I'm gonna leave, I'm gonna leave, I'm gonna leave, I'm gonna leave. Until finally, after all of us left the house, in that sense, now I look at my pop, like if I was to go to my people's house right now, my pops be in the living room, probably, what time is it right now? Yeah, my pops probably be in the living room. My mom be in her room. They both watching TV. Isolation through inclusion. You can tell the atmosphere. You ever been to somebody's house and you can like just tell the atmosphere? You can feel the tension in the atmosphere. You can feel the tension in the atmosphere. You can feel it. You can feel the tension in the atmosphere. Ask yourself, why do you go there? There's just certain places I just don't even go to anymore. Like, I will not go to places. I cannot go into a space where there's an unhealed tension in the space. It's like my spirit, my ancestors would not allow me to go into a space of that narrative. I remember like always before coming into that true inner work with myself and like going into that space, and I'd be like, why every time I leave here I feel tired as fuck? I feel more tired than I did when I first stepped into that house, stepped into that space. What am I trying to maintain? What am I trying to maintain? The good son, the good brother, the good cousin, the good friend. What am I trying to maintain? What is this good in this definition that I'm trying to maintain? What does good mean in this space? Does good in this space, usually when we think about good or bad, we're thinking about it from an aspect of bias. So now I can remain the good friend. I'm the good friend based on I always got my friends back, even if they do something stupid. So now I'm sitting at this party. For example, I'm sitting at a party. My friend in heavy quotes is sitting there. Somebody they don't fuck with is over there in the corner. I don't know why they don't fuck with each other. Neither here nor there. I just don't talk to him like because my friend don't talk to him or whatever to this space. But my friend is sitting here. It's just I'm sitting here in this space defending my friend, and I'm hyper alert. I'm in this state of hyper alertness. I'm still looking for acceptance. This is how this shit corresponds in the trauma. I'm still looking for acceptance. I'm ready to pop off when my friend pop off. So now my friend gives this person an eye. This person gives my friend an eye. Oh, we about to fight. Oh, we about to knuckle up. We about to scrap. All right, cool. We about to go outside and fight. I ain't got nothing to do with that. But I'm now involved. Now I have to realize, why do I feel the need to be included in an isolated incident, in an isolated event? An isolated event that has nothing to do with me. I don't know them. I don't know the reason why my friend don't like them. I only know, and then when it comes to the reality, I only know my friend. I only know my friend's side of the story. I've only accepted my friend's side of the story. I've only accepted my brother, my sister's side of the story. So I never get their side of the story. Now I'm isolated. through inclusion. I'm in that space because I feel I'm included in that space, but I'm isolated to the events that led to me going into that space. You ever heard somebody say, I'm afraid I'm gonna miss something? Think about your life right now. If you stayed in your house right now, and I'm breaking this down into secret society. If you spend 6 good months, 6 straight disciplined months to yourself, 6 months of building with yourself, finding the discipline within yourself. That means that would include for normal, like if you started doing your shadow work with me and you start going through shadow work therapy with me, inner child healing with me, it may be the initial is 4 weeks. We meet once to twice a month. We meet once to twice a week for 4 weeks straight. And then we adjust from there. Like maybe you might need another couple of weeks as we breaking things down. But that initial 4 weeks that you rocking with me and we going through your healing, we unlocking the aspect, we unlocking Akashic records and getting the healing exercises and all of that stuff. We doing that work. We're doing that therapy. What you're going to learn is every time you come to me, I start with meditation. So I initiate the isolation process. Then we speak on what we initiated within that guided meditation or that initiating of the isolation process. So we learn how to isolate the ego, the inner child, and the current state of you. The ego or your inner child is in the past, is the past in that continuum. Your shadow, living in your shadows, living in the high alert, living in your trauma, that's your present, that's your state of now. Your future tense is protected by your ego. So the way that you set up your future based on going through the trauma, like you going through traumatic reaction, is how you set up your future in that continuum. So that means every time you move into a space, we're isolating these things so we can better understand them. We can better outline these spaces, and now you look at yourself. You don't have time with that when you feel like you got to go to every party and every event. You're never going to have time for that. Here becomes the reality within the space. You can be literally put into a space with yourself where you have all of the time in the world. You have all the time to actually do the work that you need to do. Here's how the universe works. Here's the crazy thing about the universe. If you're not doing what you're supposed to be doing, the universe will naturally universe is going to bring you something to observe and something to experience. Now you have the choice whether you're going to go through the isolated events of experience, or the isolated events of experience, or the isolated events of observation. I'm proud to be that I'm in a healed state, that I'm in that constant stream of the isolated state of observation. That means I do not have to be there. That's the omnipresence of you being a God. That's the omnipresence. That means you ain't got to be there. And I've always had this ability. I've always had this gift. I never understood this gift until I realized that I don't have to be anywhere for people to tell me what's going on over there. I remember showing up to work sometimes, and walking into the office or walking into the back, put my backpack up or my jacket up on a hook or whatever, and people couldn't wait to tell me shit. And I sit there and I'll look at them and be like, all right, man, that's crazy, ain't it? I'll be like, sure. Man, see, you don't ever care, man. You don't ever care, man. You don't ever be thinking about that type of shit. I'll be like, and I never could give them the reason. I'll be like, and the only reason I could give them would be like, that it really ain't got shit to do with me. Like, that's their relationship, or that's their problem, or that's something that they did. It has nothing to do with me. Man, yeah, dude, because now we got to work. Now we got to work extra shifts. I'll be like, that's just overtime. Every time you look at shit, you never look at it. you don't be feeling shit. That's why niggas be thinking you weird and you a robot. I be like, yeah. Whatever makes them feel good. It took me so long to understand my nonchalant attitude. It took me so long to understand my nonchalant attitude towards anything. Now, here's the problem with having a nonchalant attitude when you're still in the realm of fear. When you're still dealing with trauma. Your nonchalant attitude corresponds to the fear, corresponded to my separation anxiety. Due to the trauma, the things that happened to me when I was in that younger state, I build a nonchalance or this not caring attitude or not allowing it to be seen that it affected me. A lot of times we come into these spaces with ourselves and we try to make it so, and it comes out as that I'm fine, I'm okay, I'll be all right. And for the masculine aspect, this is what leads into the hypermasculinity, not showing emotions, never expressing your emotions. You got to be a man. You got to be hard. You got to take pain. You can't express how you feel. All that shit. That's the hyper masculine aspect. And in the feminine aspect of that, in that isolated incident, when you isolated it up, hyper feminine is what you see outside of yourself right now. Everything in this space right here is based on two halves of the same whole. Everything outside of you right now is based on two halves of the same whole. Like, seriously as hell. And it's sad. It's like, when you really start looking at it, you be like, oh shit, man, I ain't never really looked at it that way. Like, I got sent a video the other day by yellow hair, yellow bone, this yellow nigga. Like, whatever is yellow nigga, I'm about to look him up real quick. I'm about to look through my messages real quick. His name Yellow something. I'm gonna look him up right now. Where the hell is this nigga at? Yellow Pain. And he wrote a song called Once You Cheat. And it was explaining the narcissistic aspects or the hyper masculine aspects of the man. Of like the hyper, like once you cheat, man being a cheater, how they cheat and all of these things. And if you look at it from an untrained sense, or if you still got things you still dealing with traumas. And you looking at it based on, see, that's hyper masculinity. And that's something that that's something I'm against. I have not dealt with the healing aspects to heal my masculine aspects. You're going to use that as a championship ring to you being in your hyper feminine or being in the isolated. Now you're included in the hyper feminine. You see how these things correspond? I got sent the video and then they were like, yo, it's a new wave of music talking about the hyper masculine or the toxic masculinity. And my response was, I actually fell asleep. My response was like, it needs to have balance within it. On the first verse, okay, cool. He's talking about from that end. On the other side of that, he should have, the video, if a good video that would have been good balance is showing the other end of that, or like the feminine doing that same aspect. This is when we get stuck in these isolated incidents, these isolated events. We isolate our mind into these events to serve our purpose. So we'll say the niggas ain't shit because we have an entire long line in that thicket of those woods. We have an entire example of niggas not being shit. And then we say bitches is crazy and all that shit. On the other end of this, we have an entire thicket of woods on the other patch. In the other side of these woods, they're in the same fucking woods. Surprise. On the other end of the woods, you got bitches not being loyal, bitches not all of these things that are set within the old parameters of that patriarchal mindset. So then it keeps the separation, not understanding that you both in that same space. You both are in the same atmosphere, two sides of the same fucking coin. You in the same fucking atmosphere. And now you sitting there outside of yourself trying to be like, now you're going to sit there and say these things and you don't even catch yourself saying them because you're used to reaction. You're used to going through that state of reaction. You're not used to being self-aware. You're only used to being aware based on that, as we said earlier, that high alertness, looking for the dangers. So you look for the nigga not to be any good. And when the niggas too, when that emotionally balanced brother, that emotionally balanced guy come into your life, or is in your space, and it's showing you things to make you they're giving you aspects of healing that are meant to show you how to heal yourself, you can't accept it. You waiting for the other shoe to fall off. Something gotta be wrong with this nigga. Something gotta be bad. He gotta have a past that's bad. But this motherfucker gave you his entire past. Say that same thing, bringing into balance the feminine, the woman, the goddess. She come into your life, change things, challenge you to see certain things. But the moment that it comes to a point that 6 months goes by, that 6 month period of time go by, and then it comes to that 7 month or the moment of creation, that means you about to invest into the changes in order for it to go forward. All you left with is, since you have not understood your emotions, you have not isolated, you have not looked at the isolated events that have caused the emotional imbalances in your life, guess what you do when you move forward? You can't move forward. I looked at that last relationship that I talked about earlier on, and I looked at that relationship and I realized why I couldn't go forward. Because I started my healing process. I got used to being by myself, truly by myself at this point in time. I was just coming into my awareness. I was reading some different stuff. I was reading things that was expanding, and it was stretching my mind outside of the comfort zone. But when I fell out of that high emotion, this is what happens when you come into this space, because you have not identified these isolated, these states of isolation in your life. Now you got to find yourself trying to include your old environment in the new space. This is what a lot of us do. Like when that gap starts coming up, we start trying to include these people in the old space, so we keep doing the old things. Instead of understanding and moving forward, you can't use that old way of life, that old logic. The old way that you used to do things ain't gonna work no more. The old way you used to react on impulse to doing something different, it has to change. It has to change. It's going to change. What has to happen is you got to invest into that change in order to expand, not stay the same. There's things that I've done, there's things that I used to do that I can't even do anymore. There's mindsets and things that I used to do that I can't even do anymore, that have led to me, I cannot stay I cannot stay in the bed past 7 o'clock, 7:45. And that's on a Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. I can't stay in the bed past 7:45. Just this last Saturday, I laid in bed, but I was reading a book. So it gave me a reason to be just chill in bed, because after a long day of working, long day of me doing everything that I do, I was like, okay, I got a stack of books beside my bed, and I just reach down there, pick up a book, and I start reading through the book. And before I knew it, I was in bed past 9:30. But I did something while I was there. See, this is going to become your key, and when you start growing your space in those moments of isolation that you need. What are you doing in these moments of isolation? What are you learning in these moments of isolation? See, if you ain't learning nothing in the moment of isolation, you'll always be gravitating towards something to learn you or program you or put you into that space. See, there's been so many layers within your life throughout your years and your cycles that you brought into your life that you had something to do with at every given point in time. So now that you've now changing, you're now evolving into these higher states of yourself. Now that you have this free time, you don't know what to do with it. You've always wanted to have free time. You've always wanted to have this time to yourself. But guess what? You have to define your needs. Remember, we've been getting into this all week. You have to define your needs outside of the old aspects that kept you on that state, staying in that, looking for the dangers. To always keep you in a state of danger. I'm going to give you an example how you keep yourself in a state of danger. How do you wake up? How do you wake up? How do you wake up? When you wake up, okay, I'll give you an example. Give you a nice example. I have two choices. I wake up Monday through Thursday at 5 a.m. With that being said, I can easily wake up at 5 o'clock, throw my clothes in the washer, throw my gym clothes in the washer. You did. Throw the work clothes and the gym clothes in the washer, wash them, take about 30 minutes for a good cycle. Take my clothes out of the washer, throw them into the dryer, turn the dryer on while I'm getting ready for everything that I need, getting ready for the gym. Pull my clothes out, get ready for the gym, and go to the gym. Easy. Easy as hell. I'll still leave the house. I'll leave the house around 6:15, get to the gym around 6:30. Cool. That's a program. That's a routine. That's a routine based on procrastination. That is a routine based on procrastination. I want you to understand that. That is the routine based on what we would call routine. Now here's my new routine. Here's my routine. For example, you listening to the podcast today, but I recorded the podcast yesterday. I isolate things in my life and set up things in my day, and I isolate each moment because each moment is programmed. So, for example, Saturday night, I'm formulating music and ideas for the podcast, writing down notes. Sunday, when I get up, do my meditation, do my normal, and I sit down in the living room, sit down in the studio, and I put together music. By Sunday, after 4 o'clock on a Sunday, now I'm sitting there. Okay, it's 4 o'clock. It's Sunday, 4 o'clock. Now I'm sitting there. I'm putting together the videos. That means everything that you see in the podcast, when you look at the ads and you look at all the artwork and all of that stuff, all of that's done in-house by me. I do that on Sunday. Now, Sunday, I got all of the editing software to put motion in the pictures and all that good stuff. I put all that together on Sunday. And then I put all that together on Sunday night. I got the information based on what I'm going to do for Monday, the investing change, the meditation elevation message I'm going to drop. I get that written up. I actually write a blog for all of them. And I release the blog either that day or at a later date. And I bring it down and I do all of that stuff. Now, here's the key. When I wake up at 5 o'clock in the morning, on Monday, 15 minutes is dedicated to meditation. No distractions. Because I took care of everything else. I isolated everything, got everything else taken care of. 15 minutes of meditation. 5:15, I come to, I'm programming my day, go brush my teeth. If I throw my uniforms in the it's cold outside, so now I put my hoodie in the dryer so it can get that heat to it. And then I put on my gym clothes, all except for my hoodie while it's getting hot. I go out, start the car, warm the car up, come back upstairs. I drink. It's around 5:40, 5:45. I pop my pre-workout formula that I created. I know it needs about 15. I know it needs about 30 minutes. So by 6:15, I'm leaving out the door. That's the process of isolation. That's the process of isolation. I'm going to keep getting into this right after this break. We back after that short bathroom break. But yeah, so think about your life as you're creating the things that you create in your life. So now, what most of us do, and I use that breakdown in, think about you trying to be included in something. When you're trying to be included in something, you don't know how to isolate. It's like similar to when people say the process of going to work and separating work from home, or separating business from family. These types of narratives. Think about that aspect, and you'll fight to be included in something. You will fight tooth and nail to be included in certain set of events that happen in that day to day, based on that needing something to go bad. If you don't see it, you'll go. If you don't see it in the direct current to observe, you'll go create the experience yourself. Remember, all you're doing, as long as you are in that unhealed state, as long as you have not done your internal fucking work, all you doing is imitating and emulating inside of that space. That's all you're doing. All you're doing is taking the emotions from one isolated ass event in your life, and you take it into another event in your life. And remember, you take that through the aspects of your childhood. What do you think you grow up into? This is that state of that, and we gonna get deep into this tonight. If you listening tonight, you listening today, then you know tonight, God Hour show, we gonna get into this hyper complex vortex. We gonna get deeper into it, but I want to give y'all some keys that link to this episode, link to what we're talking about. You're gonna grow. So imagine, put it like this. Okay, cool. I'm gonna teach y'all. We're gonna give y'all the teaching correspondence. All right, cool. You grew up in a household without a father. You grew up in a household without a father. So your mother is the one that raises you. Let's say you are the woman. Let's say you're the woman. You're the goddess. You're the queen. How you will be raised in that environment is to do everything without everything. And when we're talking about in the metaphysical sense, you'll be taught everything devoid of the masculine principle. That means the feminine aspect, now that you're only moving in one half of yourself, becomes hyperactive. The feminine aspect becomes hyperactive. So everything that's natural of the feminine the feminine concept, the feminine aspect of energy now becomes hyperactive to sustain survival within that space. Now, on the other end of this, the masculine aspect, since it was never taught to be within the understand the feminine aspects, everything in it becomes hyper masculine. All of it's took into a higher state in order to keep balance. Remember, everything's down here based on balance. So now that you move it in a hyper masculine state, in order to keep you in this hyper masculine state, guess what has to happen? The feminine must be isolated and because now it's the antagonist. So whatever end you on, it's the antagonist or the protagonist, it's on the other end. Now, in order for you to remain in the hyper masculine archetype, or the hyper masculine archetype, anything that's based on nurturing, anything based upon nurturing, wisdom, guidance, the things of the great mother, nurturing, wisdom, guidance, the negative aspect, the receptive aspect, you don't accept. The emotion is a negative aspect. Because without emotion, you can't understand the cycle. The knowledge of without the emotion, you do not have the wisdom or the guidance to use the knowledge that you gain through the cycle that you go into. So we break it down as an example. Traditional relationships that I've always said, I've said it before, most relationships right now that are based on trauma bonding are actually just benefit systems. Somebody serves as a crutch to emotional aspects, and the other one serves as a crutch to the physical aspects. Break it down, we don't make it real sweet and real simple, real plain. A woman that is not a woman, or the man or the woman, let's say we'll start with, we're going to go ladies first. Beautiful queen. Has not went through her aspects of healing. She's had childhood trauma. She's had childhood events that happened to her that have been trauma, anywhere from something as deep as Uncle Ricky got too touchy-feely, or all the way up to Uncle Ricky was a pimp. So let's use these two aspects. That is now the post-traumatic subconscious disclaimer. Now, in their mind, they create in their mind, they isolate in their mind, that is an isolated figure in their mind. That's what they will always look for, and that's what they will always look through. That is the lens of hyper-alertness that they will always look through. So even to the simplest things that can come into their space that can actually show it, that can actually give them an example of affection, give them the example of what love is, give them the example of what they can learn to how to respond. That way they can inform their inner child on how to heal their inner child. They'll always be triggered. They'll always be triggered at some point in time, never to allow anybody to get that close. And the things that they've used in the aspects of vulnerability are actually anchors from the trauma. They're anchors from the trauma. This is where you see like a lot of, so like I've dealt with clients. I've dealt with goddesses, queens, the women, and they went through that process in their life where it's something in deep in terms of a trauma that happened to them when they were little, and it created an anchor or a child. So now that they're living through this post-traumatic stress, this post-traumatic subconscious disclaimer, that's how they feel. This is what they're doing through hypervigilance. They're saying if they get one good child or they get one good space where they can be a good mother, it's complex. The complex within that space is based on the aspect of they're going against everything that their mother was. They're going against everything that their mother was to try to become the perfect mother. So now in every space that they go into, they're going to end the same exact way, whether conscious of it or unconscious of it, whether they set it up that way or they didn't set it up that way. That's how most of those relationships go. So this is when we start looking at, we're not supposed to be looking at this shit like, oh my God, she got like you use it for the example. I had a friend, I got a homegirl that I met like way back. This is like during one of my healing phases, and she had 5 kids with one guy, and she always kept going back to this dude. And I remember we had a conversation. I don't know why I'm telling you this. I don't know why I feel comfortable in speaking with you on this, speaking to you about this. But like the reason that I have 5 kids with this man is because every time I went back thinking that he changed, I was vulnerable, and my vulnerability came out in the physical space. We aren't together anymore. But now this is what causes it. It causes a damage and effect within the subconscious mind of the shorty, of the woman, to where now she feels like she's came to a certain point, and this happens a lot of times and we really don't call this shit out. But now in their complex, they feel like now that they've had it don't matter how many children it is. They came to a point where they got 5 kids, 6 kids. They might have 3 kids. There's 2 kids, 3 children. But they feel because they have those children, they have to offer themselves because it's natural. Natural. That's a natural law to be receptive. In order for them to be accepted, they must make the offering to nurture that of what is actually within the aspects of that toxicity that's already within the toxicity or what's already corrupt within them. They feel like they must honor that and use that as their stepping stone. So anybody that accepts that based on the terms of that doesn't matter to me, this is when you use that. This is when you in that forest without the trees, and now you're in that space isolating yourself you're using this isolated event, and that's what you're looking through. A lot of us get stuck in that isolated event. Let's take it over to the brother. For the brothers, it becomes another aspect within hypermasculinity or that hyper state of hypermasculinity where and there's many layers of the examples, and we're going to get deeper into these examples throughout the week. Where they're using this same aspect they're using that same process, but in the masculine archetype, and isolating and looking through that state of isolation to be included in things. So now their entire life is based on the external narratives to make them feel the definition of being the good man, or the definition of being the good father, or the good brother, the good sister. I remember going through this space in myself where I put myself in constant, I knowingly, because no one's stopping you but you. You put yourself in every situation. You must understand this. Based on the trauma and the isolated incident, you put yourself in these positions based on the reaction or the impulse to repress the trauma. I remember saying it, I said it like probably 2 years ago. I made a post and I was like, everything that you're going through in this current state of now is your fault. And then somebody came through, a dude came through, so like, the child getting raped was their fault. He got real emotional. I was like, no. But how you respond rather than react, that's where the fault lies. And if you're healing or if you're going to just steady keep going on in that same process. So now take that brother in that space, in that process, living by these roles. Now they'll sit there in that position. You never learn how to nurture yourself. You never learn the proper aspects of guiding yourself. You never learn how to listen to yourself. That's the feminine aspect. That's the guidance. You never learn how to listen to your emotions. And in the hyper-feminine aspect, you never learn how to, in the same tense, you never learn how to express your emotions. You only know how to emote through your emotions. See, in the masculine aspect, this has nothing to do with gender. In the man and the woman, this has nothing to do with fucking gender. Like when everybody said, I'm gonna put up some posts later on. I'm gonna put up some posts in my story. I'm gonna make some posts tomorrow, and I know I'm gonna put something. I'm gonna write it out about hypermasculinity and hyperfemininity, the hyperfeminine and the hypermasculine, and people are gonna look at it based on and. You can tell people are going to be like, yeah, the man does this because of that explains men right there. No, that shit ain't got nothing to do with that. Just because you have a vagina does not give you a free pass when you talk about being the divine feminine. And when it talks about tapping into the divine masculine, just because you got a dick do not mean that you automatically got a pass. We got to remove these fucking old isolated thought processes brought onto us through the aspects of the trauma. That's not how it works. Because then there'll be no balance. See, now, right now, everybody's talking about the rise of the feminine energy, which is cool. But on the other end of that, you have to understand that as the feminine energy rises, the only way that it can come into balance is by understanding when it triggers the aspects of the divine, the masculine aspect. So you needed those things. That's why whenever you saw, this is why when you got the programs of feminism and feminism, now they got the transgender and LGBT things. These things are meant to trigger you to learn how to respond and follow the line, follow the yellow brick road. Yeah, I've been watching the Brother Panda lecture. I watched the Brother Panda lecture. Follow that yellow brick road into understanding how these things connect. Their correspondence. Because until you understand the corresponding connections, you can't bring yourself into that balance. And then you're going to study, just like, okay, I'm going to give you a nice example. I'm going to give you a lovely example. I'm going to use a lovely example. The same niggas, the same conscious niggas, the woke niggas that used to wear a cross or whatever, or used to be religious, are doing the same shit when it comes to wearing their unks and all the unks and all the doodads and hootamawetsits. Because now all they're doing is imitating, and all they're doing is emulating they're emulating through where they're at now in this new current state of the knowledge to what you're doing on that end. So the next time you look at the 50 Cent poster when he got the cross on the bulletproof vest, and then you look at the brother that's sitting there wearing with the ankh on and got on the same bulletproof vest, talking about the white man is this and the white man is that and all that shit. The white man is the devil. Talking about demons and satanic shit. That's 50 Cent. That's the same hypermasculine. They have not understood that they're still divulging or using hypermasculinity. And even if and go even deeper with the knowledge that you acquire, it teaches you the aspects of the divine feminine. So if you're still knowingly using the hyper-masculine pretexts, you're not teaching anything. You're not learning anything. You're not doing anything. You got to allow yourself to sit with this shit. You got to allow yourself to sit with this. You got to allow that. You got to allow yourself to sit with this information. You got to allow yourself to sit with shit. You got to allow yourself to, that's why that isolation is so fucking important. I've been saying isolation through the last aspects of this. That's why that isolation is so fucking important. Because without the isolation, without the separation, you cannot have any elevation. You can't understand the dual purposes, the dual nature of everything in this space. Instead, you're going to be sitting there at your homegirl house, at your bestie house, at your sister house, and when they get in an argument with their man, you going to say their man ain't shit. And you going to quickly say it. You're going to react to it. The impulse is going to be to do it. Why? Because in your mind, you still have implements. Maybe it's your father. Maybe it's implements of your father. The example of your father was. The example of your stepfather. The example of your uncle. The example of the father figure, the fraternal figure that was in your life. You gonna go to your homeboy house. Your man's house. And that nigga gonna be talking about, I want a woman to cook, clean, and all this shit. And then you gonna immediately agree because you're gonna look at the example of the first woman that you saw cooking and cleaning and how they cooked and cleaned? Your mother, your aunt, your grandmothers, or the lack thereof. Even if you didn't have it in your life and the house was messy as hell because you didn't have a mother aspect that was messy as fuck. You gonna use that as an example still. Because you're gonna go right back to that memory when your mother wasn't cleaning up. And then you're going to go right into that same memory when your father was always arguing. And you're going to piece those two pieces together. And now you created a new aspect or a new layer to your ego to sustain in that memory. You see how you do it to yourself? You've been doing it to yourself. You walk out your house every single day feeling like you need an external purpose in order to live. You feel like you need to prove something to somebody or someone or something. Guess who you trying to prove it to? Your mother, your father, the fraternal figure, the mother figure. That's who you trying to still prove yourself to. That's who you've been trying to prove yourself to. Your father one time called you a fucking punk and you've been carrying, your stepfather called you a fucking punk and you've been using that ever since, moving through your entire life. That same emotional channel is what you've been using. That's why if your pops died, and you go to the funeral and you stand there up there on that altar and you give that victory speech and you sad, you ain't sad because your pops transitioned and passed. You sad because you couldn't look that man in the eye and be like, what do you think of me now, Dad? And then guess what you still gonna do? Through this hyper vigilant, being a vigilante of your fucking shadow, your shadow self, you're gonna be ever so vigilant in proving that your entire time. Now you attach the shit to make you, now you're only attaching the things that help you prove that case. So you never grow up. You stuck in Never Never Land. You niggas is stuck in Never Never Land. You women, you bitches is stuck in Never Never Land. You have a false perception of how you want the world to be. You have a false perception of what you want the world to be. And the world becomes exactly what you want it to be based on your sight through the trauma. But as I've been saying for the last couple of weeks, when it comes time to get what you need, you won't know how to accept it because you have not defined the acceptance of what you need internally in the healing process. So you stuck in that physical shit. My man Kev been posting like crazy. Stay off the plate, nigga. You always gonna be on the plate for somebody. You always gonna be on somebody's dinner plate, staying down here in this shit. As long as you just keep moving through that form of that hyper masculine or the hyper feminine, you always gonna be on somebody's dinner. You always gonna be on somebody's dinner plate. You always gonna be either on somebody's dinner plate unconsciously or searching to be on somebody's dinner plate. Searching to feed somebody your rhetoric. Searching to feed somebody your trauma. Searching to feed somebody your problems. Searching to feed somebody your problems. And then for dessert, their problems is now yours. And then that's how you gonna move through this whole fucking space. Not understanding that the hidden temple, that subconscious, the hidden culture that you don't understand is what's playing out in your face. The hidden culture, the secret society, the shadow government, the refracted aspects of your behavior through the white man is correspondent to your trauma. Correspondent on what you went through. I told you it all starts with that shadow work. Told y'all it all starts with that fucking shadow work. But I want to give y'all a definition real quick that I found very interesting. About to look it up now. New phone, who this? If y'all was seeing what I was doing, y'all understand why I said new phone, who this? Go to this definition real quick. This is the definition. Hypervigilance is only one of the hyperarousal symptoms of PTSD. A person experiencing this symptom will have an enhanced state of sensory sensitivity, accompanied by exaggerated behaviors. They will always be anxious. You'll always be tense. You'll always be on guard. You're always in this constant scan of that environment looking for all that shit. Now, I'm going to give you this example of how this boils down. Staying in that constant state of this hyperactive state, your body naturally shuts down. This is why when you looking at motherfuckers right now, they look like they're 40, they 50, they 60, and they 20. It's because they're in a state of hyper masculinity or hyper femininity. I'm looking at people's pictures on my Facebook, on my Instagram, and I'm like, these bitches look old. And they swear they're cute. They be like, no filter. But here's the key: when you're looking at these things, you're not looking at them like, ugh, I never could see myself around something like that, because that's you demonstrating piety and demonstrating bias. What you're supposed to be able to do is, if it triggers you, it becomes keys like this. If you're not involved in it, that means if you ain't looking at that shit, like, I don't watch I don't watch any of the Love and Hip Hop. I haven't watched that shit since Jim Jones was on it the first time. I watched all the Black Ink because Black Ink, the spirit said, watch Black Ink, and I broke down all that shit in there. But if you're not involved in it, don't get involved in it. Do not try to include yourself into it. But there is a way to isolate yourself to become the observer of it. That is going to be the major key when you're training yourself to break these hyper barriers that you put onto these hyper barriers that you put onto yourself, so you can allow yourself to actually flow naturally into this vortex and get into that vortex. We're gonna be getting deep into that. We're gonna be getting deep into that on Friday. But tonight, you listen to today, tonight we're gonna be getting into the God Hour show. We're gonna get into this hyper complex vortex. But this has been another episode of that God Hour podcast. Stay tuned for the plug talk. Last message from our sponsor, and then we gonna get into this closeout. Y'all all right out there? Peace. We gotta keep you plugged with that plug talk. God talk, plug talk. As I said before, if you're interested, if the message resonated with you and you want to do deeper in-depth work, from shadow work, therapy, inner child work, it starts with that consultation, it starts with a reading, it starts with hitting me up at GodaCallAlchemistLLC.com, or you hit me in the inbox at RockCallerNegis, that's the Facebook page, or Papa_Lucy666 on Instagram. Inbox me, DM me, hit me on the website, or you can hit the number 910-777-7708. Get that dialogue and book that appointment today. Speaking of days, today is my death day. You listen to this today, February 16th. Today is my death day. Today is the only day that matters. Quite literally right now. Today is my death day. And for Occult Alchemy, my Shopify.com special promotion, 30% off your entire order, 30% off in honor of my death day. Do something nice. Type in the promotional code, capital P, capital L, the number 216. When you go into your cart, and 30% off your entire order. That means you can cop a shirt. You can cop a shirt, 30% off. That's in honor of buy yourself something nice. That's how I give back. I don't want anything. I don't want to need anything. Just go in there and get yourself something nice. What else talking about? Speaking of that, you know, last week got on the God Called Alkhemist, my YouTube channel. We got into Clone Wars. We got into the aspects of until you step out of this mindset of fear, all you're doing is basically imitating. Like the Friday before last, we got into the aspects of breaking imitation. This week we got into the aspects of the Clone Wars, or continuously clone, or allowing others to clone you based on your behaviors in certain spaces. This week we're getting into defining luxury, defining that luxury. So stay tuned for that information coming up on that G.O.D Alkhemist YouTube channel, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, every Friday night. You know, we get into something deeper in these aspects of the shadow work, understanding how to use these tools for more than just staying where the fuck you at. It all starts with that shadow work. But you know, tonight, you listening tonight, God Hour Show, the God Hour Show, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, via Facebook Live. Rock Code, we just tune in and tap out to that. This week we get into the hyper drive, or the hyper masculine and the hyper feminine aspects when it comes into staying in this high alert phase, to remaining in that old cycle of yourself. Live readings, it's a vibe, it's a party. Come and tap through. And after this last break, we don't get into this closeout. I appreciate you for all the support. I love you. We love us. I'll share. The first time ever the heat came on while I was recording. That's crazy. Means it must really be cold outside. But I want you to be the fucking best, man. Like, in order to understand where we're at, we have to go back to where we came from in these aspects. A lot of times we find ourselves in these spaces with ourselves where we don't. This is the work. I'm gonna put it like that. This is the work. I don't care how much. And I say this to myself all the time. I don't care how much garb and what in the pageantry you go through, until you put yourself in a space where you actually going through the healing process, you'll start understanding why some of them things stand out to you and why you don't like certain things. Like, there's no reason in this point in time, it's real shit. There's no reason in this point in time that you should be sitting here saying fuck religion. Because that's just a mask. What you're truly saying is fuck my mother for showing me religion, or fuck my father for religion and all these aspects. But what you're really saying is why? Your inner child is asking why. Why did we have to learn that? Or why did we go through this process? That's going to be your key. Isolating to learn how to respond. Not sitting here isolating to learn how to respond, not isolating yourself just to learn so you can react, so the impulse is to be stuck with being included in something. So you sitting there stuck because I watch it. I remember looking at debates, and I look at debates, they're comedy to me, because it's like there'll be like 50, 60 people in there in a room, in the little chat room, going back and forth. And shit, talking about, yeah, he's talking some real shit, because it's Satan and it's the white man and all this. And I'm sitting there looking at these comments, I'm like, all of y'all are literally coming back here. I respect y'all. Maybe that's what y'all need. But nigga, y'all's coming back here. Because you don't understand the aspect. Like, I look at motherfuckers talk about saying things are satanic and demonic, And I'm like, wait, basic science, not even, you don't have to go that deep to go get the etymology of that word to understand what it means. Oh, y'all stuck in behaviors. Y'all stuck in emotion. Y'all stuck in the hyper aspects of the hyper intensive aspects of the hyper barrier of that magnetosphere that is your world. And if that shit pop, your world dies. That's where a lot of us get stuck at a lot of times. When that bubble pops or that bubble bursts, that greenhouse gas starts to leak out and our world starts to fucking fall apart. The trees in our forest start to fall and start to die. All of our trauma start to be becoming exposed to this light, to this new energy that's supposed to burn that shit down. And we like, nah, we got to save the trees, save the trees. Ask yourself the next time you hear save the trees, what trees are you still trying to hold up? What monuments are you still trying to preserve? What stature of limitations are you still trying to hold on to so you can keep doing what you're doing? So you can keep being so hyper vigilant and surviving through struggle, surviving through the old mindset. It's been another episode of the God Hour podcast. Let it resonate. Let it do what it need to do. Let the knowledge do what it's supposed to do. It's supposed to hurt your feelings. It's supposed to make you feel some type of way. Did I trigger you? That means it's working. Learn how to respond. Gain that information so you can go to your final destination. This has been your occult psychologist, your master of ceremonies, Papa Lucifer. I'll see y'all next week. I love you. We love us. Ashe.